Hey there everyone, welcome to Tales and Texts and I'm your host Nisha. I'm coming back with a really interesting video which is my experience of the Kaveri Trail Marathon. Let's dive right in, and as usual I have put the timestamps down below so you can jump directly to the sections that you want. But if you are planning to run the Kaveri Trail Marathon, then it's best to watch this entire video. And if you have already run this trail marathon, do let me know in the comments how your experience was and if you ran it this time in November 2022, because then you would have been my marathon buddy or marathon mate. I think that would have sounded much nicer, right? All right, let's dive right in. So let's start with some brief background about the Kaveri River Trail Marathon. So the Kaveri Trail Marathon, also called the Kaveri River Trail Marathon, is India's oldest trail marathon. It was started in 2007 by India's largest running community, which is Runners for Life. And in the initial very first marathon hosted by Runners for Life, the Kaveri Trail Marathon, there were 700 participants. And since 2007, this trail marathon has only grown more popular and has become a beloved amongst running enthusiasts. Running as a culture is still in its nascent stages in India, and the running events or running centered events that take place in India are still few and far between. Even in the events that do take place, trail running is still a very negligible portion of Indian running. And so having a trail run marathon which offers people the opportunity to really challenge themselves and to try something that's completely different and new is what has attracted thousands of people every year to the banks of the river Kaveri. Now, the Kaveri Trail Marathon takes place near the Ranganthettu Bird Sanctuary, which is kind of located between Mysuru and Srirangpatna. The entrance to the trail marathon starts at the canal entrance that is just a couple of 100 yards away from the Ranganthettu Bird Sanctuary. So there's just this long winding road that goes kind of out of Srirangpatna. I mean, you don't have to cross Srirangpatna, more towards Mysore, very close to the outskirts of Mysore, and then you take a deviation, and just on that road, once you take the deviation about half a kilometer away, you get the canal entrance, and that's where the marathon actually starts. And just a couple of meters, another probably about 500 meters away from the canal entrance is where the Ranganthettu Bird Sanctuary actually starts. So just a tip, make sure you have some time either before or after your marathon to visit the Ranganthettu Bird Sanctuary, because it is a beautiful nature preserve with many endemic and exotic flora, fauna, specifically birds. It's an ornithologist's heaven, and if you bring a pair of binoculars, you can really enjoy sights of some of the most beautiful exotic and endemic birds over there. This year's trail marathon was organized on November 27, 2022. So I'm pretty much fresh off the trails, you could say, because as of the filming of this video, I have completed the run just yesterday, and so I'm pretty stoked right now. So let me just take you through the entire experience. I'm going to start off with the trail itself, and I'm going to take you through a couple of other aspects that you may want to know about if you are planning to participate in this run. Initially, when it was started, it had only 10K, half marathon and full marathon. But this year, there was a 5K which was open to anyone, including children, a 10K, 21.1, which is a half marathon, and a 42.2, which is a full marathon. The trail itself, I would say, is pretty easy. If you have experience with trail running, then I would say the Kaveri Trail Marathon's trail, the actual trail, is very beginner friendly. It's almost, it doesn't have a lot of craters, it doesn't have a lot of rocks that are jutting out. It is pretty flat with certain sections where there are large potholes, but for the most part, the trail itself is very flat. It was very easy. So if this is your very first trail marathon or your very first experience with the trail, you should not be finding this particular trail super hard. Now, if you have experience only with road running, that is paved road running or track running, then definitely a trail run would be slightly different and perhaps challenging. But if you have, for example, if you go to a park which has, let's say, unpaved roads which resemble trails, or maybe you do perform hill runs, or you are an active trail runner, then you would find this trail very, very beginner friendly. There are certain sections of the trail which are covered in grass and other weeds. There are certain sections, of course, because this is a village trail which is used by animals of all sorts. You will find dung on the trail, so definitely do be careful because that can get slippery. But if overall the weather is sunny and bright, then you should not have any problem running on the trail. It does not get slippery, and I personally found the trail to be surprisingly easy because I had anticipated it was going to be significantly more difficult. But even with my limited trail run experience, because there are a couple of local parks that I frequent which have trails which are a lot more technically challenging than this, so I found it surprisingly easy. Now, there are certain sections, of course, where there's some sort of a digging happening or construction happening, because although this trail is located in a village, it is still very close to the city. So a lot of city village interactions will be happening, and there will be sections where you might find some gravel or some sand that's being dug up in very, very small sections of the trail. But overall, the trail is very neat, tidy, clean. It's pretty flat, and it's a pleasure to run on the trail. Now, surrounding the trail, of course, on one side you have these beautiful sugarcane fields and paddy fields and other fields that are cultivated. You can find fields that are full of these yellow flowers and yellow leaves, and green trees, and these lavender flower, like, I'm pretty sure that's sugarcane. So there's this profusion of colors on the fields on one side, and on the other side you have the beautiful canal which has the Kaveri river, and as you run on the trail, you can listen to the lapping of the water on one side, and the rustling of the leaves and the flowers and the fields on the other. It's quite literally a very ethereal feeling, and especially because the run itself starts at 6 a.m. At least this year it started at 6 a.m. and it wasn't sunrise yet, so it was very beautiful because dawn was just breaking, and just the entire vibe was very magical. And as you run, you get to spot the glorious sunrise, and I'm sure you would want to just stop and take a photo, because I did. I just could not fathom just continuing to run while this glorious sunrise was happening, and so I just stopped, pulled out my phone and took a photo. It was just absolutely beautiful, and just the entire experience of running on the trail is spectacular until you cross the 8 a.m. mark. Now that's where the problem starts. The trail itself isn't a problem, the surroundings aren't a problem. The surroundings are, in fact, probably the only thing that will keep you going once the sun hits the sky. Quite literally, once the sun is in full force, that trail is punishing, it is brutal. Now, I had participated in the half marathon, which is the 21.1 kilometers category. And by the time I reached the 13-14 kilometer mark, the sun was already up. And I will be honest, I am a back of the pack runner, but even if you are a middle of the pack runner, you will experience the sun at some point during the race. Perhaps you would experience it in the last 3 to 4 kilometers, but you are going to experience it. So for most middle of the pack and back of the pack runners, you are going to be in the sun for a majority part of the race. And it is punishing. So I would say hydration is super, super important. And if you have the practice of wearing a cap or a hat while you're running, I think that is going to help you in some way. Because the air was still and it felt stifling and the sun was scorching, and the aid stations are located 1 kilometer from each other in distance. I will talk about the aid stations in a little detail after this, but you have to be ready to face a lot of sun, because the city of Mysuru and just that area of Karnataka is hotter than other parts. For example, if you're from Bangalore, you would be used to a much more cooler climate compared to what you would experience over there. So definitely, despite having all the trees, despite having the water, it feels extremely stifling and hot. And so, because also once again, it is a village dirt road, it's a trail, you are away from habitations. So unless you are close to an aid station, and unless at that point, someone from the volunteers group is somewhere nearby, asking for help is going to become a problem. Because there were a lot of times when I was doing the run, and I am sure many of us, just like me, many of you would find that during the later parts of the run, you tend to walk more as well, because once the fatigue starts setting in, and added to the stress, is the sun that tires you out even faster, you would find yourself walking, so your pace would slow down. And so there are a large chunks of trail where you find yourself that you're the only person on the trail, quite literally. There is no one else. You could spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour before you see another person. This doesn't mean that the trail is unsafe, but it's just that you need to be a little extra cautious compared to, let's say, when you are doing any other run which is on, for example, a road running or a track running marathons, where that there are shops nearby or homes nearby, so that in case you feel really tired and you just want to sit down, or maybe you're feeling dizzy, you're feeling nauseous, these things happen, right? And you need help. Just on the trail, unless you are closer to an aid station, or there's a volunteer who happens to pass by you at that time, or a villager who happens to pass by you at that time, there are larger chunks of time when you would be alone on the trail. So once the sun is scorching, you need to be extra cautious. And this is where my next point comes in, which is about the aid stations. One of the things that really impressed me about the Kaveri Trail Marathon was the aid stations. Now, as someone who has done a couple of half marathons already, I have personally seen how in the road marathons, I'm just going to distinguish it between trail marathon and road marathon. So in many of the road marathons half marathons that I have done, I have personally experienced a lack of support in the aid stations, a lack of support in terms of volunteers being around to help us. Now, the perspective that I speak from is that I'm a back of the pack runner. I am usually one of the last few people to complete that category, because I'm slow. Now, for those of you who are back of the pack runners, I'm sure you can resonate with this, you can empathize with this. There are a lot of times that when it happens that certain aid stations will be shut down, and instead of having an aid station every kilometer, it would be placed every 2 kilometers or every 3 kilometers apart. Or volunteers, they kind of lose steam, because obviously, it's human. I get it to a certain extent, because it's tiring staying around from 4 in the morning till 9, 10, waiting for everyone to complete their run, because they're human too, they're feeling hungry, they're feeling tired. So I have personally faced a lot of problems in terms of not finding aid, not finding enough stations with enough energy drink or water, or not having any volunteer to ask for help, ask for support. Or even, in road running, there is always an issue that if you're a back of the pack runner, you will run into traffic at some point, and because there are no volunteers at that time, you will have to kind of wait for the traffic to pass until you are able to move ahead. So in India, those are issues that we face, especially if you're a back of the pack runner, right? Now, in the Kaveri Trail Marathon, I found that both the volunteering and the aid station experience was incredible. I was particularly happy with the kind of support that was provided throughout the trail. Now, it's mainly because, one is that, when you have a 42K going on, a full marathon, you know that there will be people even in the full marathon category who are the back of the pack, so it's going to definitely take a long time for them to finish, a longer time compared to, let's say, the front of the pack or the middle of the pack runners. And you need to have volunteers and aid stations active and available at all times. But more importantly, the fact that this is a trail and there is, like I mentioned, the punishing sun, it is going to definitely add to the timing and the fatigue element tremendously. I found that the volunteers were very helpful. There were volunteers not only stationed at each of the aid stations, but there were volunteers kind of placed every 500 meters, just one volunteer per 500 meters. So at any point, you would come across a section where there was a volunteer who was either sitting or standing there. You could ask for help, and if at any point you felt like you just couldn't go on, or that you needed some sort of first aid or medical support, then they would pick up their phone and call the very closest aid station, and they would convey the message to the doctors on standby or to anybody else who could possibly help. And there was a lot of such support being provided. Another thing that I found was that there were volunteers who were, at least on the hour, they were riding their motorcycle up and down the entire trail to check up on people and to kind of stop and ask, if anybody needed some first aid or some help. I found out later, once my run was done, that there were a couple of people who had injured themselves after tripping, a couple of people who had bouts of vomiting because of the heat and the tiredness. So there were a couple of instances like that, and the support provided was really good. The aid stations themselves were very well stocked at every aid station, and like I mentioned, because I'm a back of the pack runner, I was taking a lot longer than other people. So even at that stage, even though I spent so much more time on the trail itself, I found that the aid stations were very well stocked. There were huge barrels of energy drink, huge barrels of water. There were trays of biscuits, glucose biscuits, bananas, oranges. And in a couple of aid stations, they had locals, the villagers who owned sugarcane fields. They had them bring in the sugarcane, and they were giving fresh sugarcane juice, which was very refreshing. Trust me, when you are on that trail, sugarcane juice, even though it's a small cup, it's just very small, just about 2 to 3 sips, it feels like ambrosia. It feels like a godsend. So they had people, the villagers, come in and churn out the sugarcane juice, fresh sugarcane juice, just rich, with sugars and flavors. And it's just, I think that was my best part of the trail, just drinking that sugarcane juice. So I found that experience to be very nice. So you don't have to worry in terms of volunteer support or aid stations, because Kaveri Trail Marathon has got it sorted out. So definitely you can enjoy the trail as long as you are paying attention to your body, listening to your body, and hydrating yourself regularly, taking the nutrition that you need at the right time, and seeking help from the volunteers and the aid stations whenever you need it. I think this trail marathon is actually going to be pretty good. Even if it is hard, it's going to be pretty good. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about my personal experiences with the actual running of the marathon. So I started with limited training because I had injured my ankle, and so I did not train as well as I otherwise would have. And so I didn't come in with a lot of training, because of which the experience was much harder for me than it would have been otherwise. But if you have the right kind of training, if you train, like I said, on the trails, or on any sort of road which is not very paved, and it kind of gives you that added challenge, where your micro muscles are being activated while you're running, then I think this trail is going to be, at least if not completely easy, it is definitely easier than it otherwise would be. Now, when you're actually running on the trail, the Kaveri Trail Marathon is a single trail. Now, what I mean by single trail is that the direction that you go in is the direction that you come back in. So what happens is, when you're going, you are bound to meet someone who's coming from the other side. So it's a single trail, and so there are chances where you may have to sort of move aside, step aside, and move into the bushes, move into the tree line, in order to let someone else coming from the other direction pass. This is something that definitely I experienced, because when someone who was, let's say, at the front of the pack was actually coming back, and they were running at high speeds, so I definitely moved aside for them to go ahead. So that is something, you would definitely be experiencing at some point during the race, because not only is there a half marathon, there's also a full marathon. So there are a lot of people you will meet who will come again on a second loop, which is once again on the same trail. So if this is okay with you, then I think there is no problem about this. But I do know some people who do find it annoying having to give way, especially when they are in their own run, which is understandable, because you're in your own run, you may have fatigue, you may be feeling annoyed with the heat, so obviously it can get on your nerves. But this is just something you should be aware of, that it's a single road that you go and come on multiple times. Speaking of multiple times, because the trail run is on a single trail, and because you are going to see the same surroundings over and over again, if you are considering which category or which distance to cover, the best choice would either be 10 or 21. 21 would ideally be the best, purely because you get to see the entire trail start to finish, and you can see it only twice, or you will have to see it only twice. With 42, what happens is the boredom sets in, because the first loop that you're going it's somewhere between 10.5 to 11 kilometers. You have the loop coming back to finish. So one way you go, you're super excited, everything looks beautiful, great. You come back, find that excitement is kind of still there, but you're kind of over it now as well. But if you're doing a 42-kilometer run, if you're doing a full marathon, then doing a second loop on the same trail can get a little boring. If you prefer running only on trails, then perhaps you would enjoy having this experience, doing a full marathon on this trail. Another thing that you have to remember is that because this is a trail that is very close to a village, at some point, especially like I said, after the 8 o'clock mark or 9 o'clock mark, that's when the villagers will be up and about. They'll be going to their fields, they'll be starting their farming and other kinds of activities. So you are going to run into bullock carts, loaded with sugarcane or paddy or hay for their animals. You are going to find bullock carts coming in your way, so just do be careful, because the cart itself can knock you off your feet. You might come across tractors that are going on their way to the fields. You might be coming across people who are working on the canal. So or you might come across women going about their washing vessels and clothes, and you will definitely come across little kids who are super curious about why you're running up and down this trail in this mad heat. So it's definitely a very rustic experience. It's also exciting, and this trail, after a point, like I said, after the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock mark, you will definitely find it busy and bustling. But again, nowhere as busy and bustling as you would, let's say, a road marathon on the street with traffic. So still, even with the back runners, even if you take a lot of time, for the most part, I would say at least 90% of your run will be completely deserted and isolated, in the sense that you won't come across too many people. You won't meet too many runners or villagers, and it honestly feels like you're going on this solo adventure, where you're literally the only person in that particular place. One final thing that I do want to mention with my personal experience was that the only thing I just kind of miffed about a little bit was that there were no porta potties located on the trail itself. Now, this could perhaps be because most of the places here was either the fields or the canal itself with the water. So perhaps the organizers didn't get permission to put the porta potties there, because it would of course ruin the land, because feces, especially if it's mismanaged, it might ruin the plants, or it might contaminate the water, which is the source of drinking water for millions of people in South India. So definitely I get it, but I do wish there was some sort of arrangement done, because otherwise you are going to have to go in the bushes somewhere, which is fine for male bodied individuals. But if you are a woman or a female bodied individual, definitely it's going to be a problem. But then again, I would say if you can find an empty stretch where there's no one around, just go for it. Duck into some bushes and just do your business and keep moving. Now on to one of the most exciting parts of this Kaveri Trail Marathon, Kaveri Trail running actually, is the spotting of wildlife, because there are plenty. Right off the bat, you're going to see peacocks, a lot of them. I personally spotted quite a few. I tried to take a photo of one, but as you know, phone cameras are not really that powerful, and I couldn't get a good clear image of it. But you will see a lot of peacocks, you will see a lot of kingfishers, you'll see a lot of other birds which you may have never seen before and whose songs are just so beautiful and heavenly. You will see monkeys, and you'll see monkeys especially around the aid stations because of the bananas over there. So especially if you're planning on eating your banana, I would say stand at your aid station and finish eating it before moving on. A monkey almost attacked me when I was running because I was holding the banana in my hand and I was moving, and I finally just threw the banana at it, and I was like, buddy, you can keep your banana because I don't want to get attacked by you. So you're going to see a lot of monkeys there, you're going to see a lot of bees, you're going to see just squirrels. You will see so many different creatures, woodland creatures, like or the birds, because Rangan Thittu Bird Sanctuary, like I said, is just a stone's throw away. It's really beautiful. The flowers, the profusion of flowers, and the plant life on the trail is spectacular. It's just really beautiful. You'll see so many species of butterflies, and they're just so incredible. The diversity of butterflies is just unbelievable. So definitely, if you if you aren't chasing a personal record or a personal best, if you aren't particularly focused on your pace or a particular completion time, I think, if you are willing to slow down, stop, and quite literally smell the roses, although there are no roses, smell the other flowers instead, I think you'll really enjoy this trail. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Another thing that I wanted to cover was the medal itself, and here it is. So this one is made of wood, and I think this is a super cool idea. It is light, it's portable, and it's just super cute with this green color sash. And this is what you will get once you complete the Kaveri Trail Marathon. And it is wonderful to wear it once you are done with your run. And now I come to the end of this video, where I just provide some little tidbits or suggestions. If they call to you, you can definitely implement them. Which is, first off, practice on a trail if you can, because that is definitely going to make your life so much easier when you come to the Kaveri Trail Marathon. Second, stick to 21.1, because that is definitely not going to bore you once you come onto the second loop, because the second loop can be punishing, especially because of the sun. Third, speaking of the sun, hydrate. Drink lots of water, keep topping up your energy drink, which is available in every aid station. Have the biscuits, have the bananas, because that's really going to help you overall. Fourth one, although the trail is pretty easy, do keep an eye out for jutting rocks or sudden dips or fresh dung which can be slippery. Because on one side you have, on actually both sides you kind of have embankments. On one side there's a canal, on the other side there's fields. So if you trip, there is a risk of falling on either sides, which is very dangerous. Next tip is, if you need help, even if you feel the slightest bit nauseous or dizzy, or you trip and you hurt yourself in some way, even if you feel like it's just a scratch, do go to the closest aid station and ask for help, because like I mentioned, the trail is pretty isolated for large stretches. That is between that, even if it's just 500 meters or that 1 kilometer, even if it doesn't seem a lot, just be on your guard, be safe, be smart, and ask for help, and take advantage of the incredible volunteers and support structure that they're providing you. And final tip, just enjoy the environment, because I know that a lot of us have our own, we want to beat our personal records and we want to be better than the previous time we did a marathon or a half marathon or a 10K or a 5K, right? But it's very seldom, unless this is the only running event that you're participating in every year. It's very rare that you get this kind of experience. Now, especially with climate change that's happening, we see a lot of forests that are drying up, trees are dying. We see a lot of species that are going extinct. We see a lot of riverbeds that are becoming dry, right? So who knows, unless we humans come together to stop climate change, to reverse climate change, who knows how long the Kaveri Trail will actually be there for us to enjoy. Who knows how long the Kaveri Trail will be there for us to run with. So just enjoy the trail, because we don't know how long we have with the trail. All right, this brings me to the end of this video. If you found any value in this video, please do like my video and subscribe to my channel, and do comment down below what your thoughts are about the Kaveri Trail Marathon and whether you're going to be doing it, or if you did do it, how was your experience? I would love to know. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next episode of Tales and Ticks. Bye.